too.
Oh,
Okay. Refuse forgiveness and if
I think it is, but the report isn't ready.
Right.
We should probably have it next
Around
month.
the corner last time?
So,
We don't have a flag.
but
I
it,
was just looking at it.
I'm sorry. Oh, where is our
Where did it go?
It's there anyway.
Bye.
We will, wait, regularly roll call first. I'm really roll call first. So at the beginning of the meeting, it's been suggested that we roll call, even though we're all sitting here, just Jens, can you just acknowledge you're here? It's your first meeting.
Sherry Peters here. Becky Klein here.
Alex, I'm here. Tanya Long here. All right, now we'll stand in touch.
Well,
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I feel like you're in second grade.
a little bit. Yeah.
That was too good to not do.
Thank you, Zach.
Yes, thank you, Zach.
Right, so we received and we got here an updated agenda. I would entertain a motion to approve this agenda for the evening's activities.
I'll make a motion to approve this agenda for tonight.
I'll second it.
All those in favor of approving the agenda, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say no. Moving on to the consent agenda, were there any questions, comments, or concerns in what you saw from the packet that you would like to ask questions about? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda. I second it.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye. Aye. All those opposed, say no. Great, we'll move on to public comment. We have first up, Ms. Connie Poisnel. Good evening, Connie.
Hello, I'm Connie Poisel. I reside in Garden City. I am a retired public school teacher and a member of the Library Foundation. I would like to welcome the two newly appointed library board members. I hope that the two new board members will serve as advocates of the library and not succumb to their own personal preferences, but rather support the well-established mission of all public libraries to offer free and unrestricted access to information to the community. I wish to stress that I have no problem with one of the new members' mother serving on the Cass County Historical Society board with my husband. I know that an individual can have a close relative on the CCHS board and still be an independent thinker and speaker. However, at the May Library Board meeting, a current member expressed concern that my husband and myself were members of the Cass County Historical Society and my husband was a CCHS board member. There appeared to be a more than strong attempt to portray my remarks as being inaccurate and influenced by our membership in the Cass County Historical Society and my husband's position on the CCHS board. Will this same member spend approximately 4 minutes detailing their concern over the new member's mother serving on the CCHS board with my husband? A member who, unlike me, will be making policy. If this member does not express their concern, then it would appear that this concern was little more than their personal animosity toward me and little more than their attempt to diminish and place doubt on the accuracy of my remarks regarding the questionable actions and remarks of herself and her cohorts on the board. I will be waiting with interest regarding whether this member raises this concern at this meeting. If this concern is not raised tonight, then we will know the apparent true motive behind this member's concern over my husband's position on the CCHS board. Thank you so much.
I'm Tom Marshall. You may remember me from past meetings. You also remember that I kicked myself out of your meeting on June 19th. I was one of the people in the meeting who reacted audibly to Jessica Levson's remark about communists and socialists in her woefully uninformed critique of a social media post, which apparently included some images from or reference to the 1968 Olympic Games in Mexico City. In those games, Tommy Smith set the world record for the 200-meter dash and won the gold. The silver medal was won by a runner from Australia, Peter Norman. The bronze went to John Carlos. As the national anthem was being played while the three men were on the medal stand, Smith and Carlos, who were wearing socks but no shoes, each raised one arm and clenched a fist. One raised his right hand, the other raised his left. One of them forgot to bring his gloves, and they split the pair they had. Peter Norman had asked them what he should do, and they gave him a patch supporting equal rights, which he pinned to his jacket. They gave what was called a Black Power salute because they wanted to bring attention to the racial issue of equal rights. It triggered massive coverage, some positive and some negative. This event is part of our history, even if Jessica never heard of it. There have been and will be disagreements about how the library should be managed. There are those who apparently think that libraries are contributing to the decline of our culture and discourse. There are others who think that libraries embody the ideals of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, and freedom to read. Calling each other Nazis and communists is not likely to lead to resolution of those disagreements. What Scott Carlos did in 1968 is widely known and an important part of Black history. A statue honoring them has been erected at San Jose State University, where they were both students. Another statue honoring the two men appears at the National Museum of African American History and Culture, part of the Smithsonian Museum in Washington. As a matter of interest, in 2006, Peter Norman's funeral, Tommy Smith and John Carlos were pallbearers. They also both delivered eulogies. Smith described Norman as a man who believed right could never be wrong and told Norman's family Peter Norman's legacy as a rock. Stand on that rock. Carlos said not every young white individual would have the gumption, the nerve, the backbone to stand there. I would personally like to thank Jessica for her ignorance of the facts about which she offered her opinion. It caused me to learn a great deal more about the original protest, which I saw live on German television when I was stationed in Germany in 1968. The Cass County Library staff member who put the post up for Black History Month was absolutely right. Protests by Black Americans seeking equal rights and justice are an important part of our history. It's not the staff who needed to understand the past. In this case, it is a former member of your board who needs to spread a few more facts into her opinions. Thank you. By the way, the book by Tommy Smith took about 1.5 minutes for the librarian at the Belton branch to find for me. And it's by Tommy Smith about the protest and what was going on. So having somebody airing an opinion at a board meeting without knowing about that, I don't get it. Thank you.
About
This is Cheryl Wilson with the state auditor's office, so join in.
Excellent. Hi, Jill. Can you hear me? This is Robin Hudson.
Yes, I can.
Wonderful. Thank you for joining us. It's perfect timing because we're about to go into that part of our agenda. And Jill is from the state auditor's office, and she's been invited tonight to just kind of come and give an overview about tax levying. Next month, the board will have the responsibility of voting on what tax levy we'll be doing for this year. And we thought it'd be good to have just some background and have someone who can answer any questions that you might have. So, Jill, did you have a little overview that you are able to do for us?
I'm not sure what they're wanting to know. Did everyone read over the email that I had sent regarding the Hancock Amendment and how it works and how the rates are adjusted each year?
Yeah, the Hancock Amendment is kind of clear as mud in ways.
So I think maybe that's the area then that if we could maybe just get a little bit more insight into that.
So basically, how the Hancock Amendment works is, say a rate of 25 cents is passed. And then the next year, the assessed valuation increased quite a bit. What happens is the Hancock Amendment is put in place to where you can't get a windfall off of that increase in assessed valuation. So it's going to push your rate down in order to, you're still going to get the same amount of revenue. You're going to be having a lower rate on a higher assessed value. You do get to increase your revenue up to the CPI. It's your assessed value did increase and increased higher than what the consumer price index is, then you would get an increase in revenue of up to that consumer price index or 5%, whichever one is lower. So basically, what will happen is if the assessed valuation goes up too far, it'll push your rate down. If your assessed valuation goes down too far, it will push your rate back up. It can never exceed that voter approved rate though.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions about that?
Well, I have a question on since there was a voluntary reduction last year, does that affect, because it said in the even number years and the odd number years, and I wasn't real clear.
So
How does that affect us this year?
in an odd numbered year, it's going to automatically drop off. So it's not going to follow you forward. So it's going to go back to the ceiling for the next year's calculation instead of using that voluntarily reduced rates for the ceiling. Whereas in an even numbered year, so this year, if you took a voluntary reduction, it would follow you forward. So say you reduce your rate to 24 cents even. That 24 cents would be used to start the calculation next year instead of if your rate ends up being 0.2420 again. Instead of using that 0.2420, you would have to use the 0.2400 if you took the voluntary reduction down to that.
I guess just to make it real simple, what they did last year will not affect us on this one.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Now, if a voluntary reduction is taken in an even number year, it even after that second year, it doesn't automatically go back up, does it? Is there something that
No, it does not automatically go back up. So if you took a voluntary reduction this year and you wanted to raise your rate back up to what it would have been had you not taken a voluntary reduction, you would have to do that in an even numbered year. You would have to hold a public hearing, pass a resolution, policy statement, or ordinance, It would be the state, which one, which would be the undue voluntary reduction. And it would be to have a reason. It doesn't necessarily matter, what the reason is. It can be for the purchase of toilet paper, whatever, as long as it has a reason out there. And then it would need to be provided to our office.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Is there any other thoughts or questions that anybody has?
Do you,
I think that was probably the biggest.
when did we get this form started for this year? It came from does it come from the state auditor's office?
Yes.
So Cass County actually enters the assessed valuation information. Once they enter that assessed valuation information, they submit it to our office for review, and we would provide the pro forma back to Cass County. They have not submitted yet this year.
Okay.
However, it's only been open for about a week and a half for them to even be able to, and they are advised, that it is best to use those for equalization if that's values, and those may not be available to them yet.
I think the Board of Equalization met sometime this week, so maybe they're working on it.
I've received the first notification of assessment valuation, and I understand there's supposed to be the second one.
Yeah,
I think it's contingent on that meeting. So I haven't received the second one yet.
yeah. So they're working on it.
And the information is due back to the auditor's office by the 31st of August, is that correct? When's it due?
They are actually due back to your county,
County.
and they're due to your county by September 1st.
And then they roll it up to y'all, right?
And then they enter the certification in our system, and then we would review and approve those as well.
Okay, I don't know that there's any other.
And if you guys ever come up with any questions or anything, you can feel free to give us a call or you can email. A lot of times the email is the quicker route to take, just because they normally take messages for me and I return phone calls at a certain time during the day. But you're more than welcome to reach out and email us at our tax rates email.
Okay, thank you so much. Is there anything else?
Is there anything else?
I don't think so. I appreciate your help.
All right. Sounds good.
All right.
All right,
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
All right. Bye.
Any thoughts, questions with respect to this will be something that we'll address obviously next month.
So it's gonna roll back up to the 0.2420?
Depending on what the assessment value
yeah,
is,
but-
right?
That's
Well-
the tinted.
Our full
No, it's
amount
not
that we could
0.2545.
take is actually 0.2633. That's what the voters voted for. That's where they start. And then once the calculations based on those assessment changes are done, that's when they'll tell us what our maximum could be.
Okay.
And it will probably be lower than this 2633.
Right.
Because that's the only year we've been able to take that one was the very first one.
Right.
So,
But this wasn't an assessment year, was it?
It was 2020, 2020. So you gotta remember, like, we did this in 2023 for the tax year of 2024. So it was an odd number year.
Right.
This year, they did the new evaluation, so whatever we set this year will be for 2025 and 2026.
Okay.
Is that correct, Lindsay?
Unless you roll it back.
Unless we roll it back for some.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thanks for clarifying that, Darcy. So this we will do sometime next month. All right, if there's nothing else on that, we'll move on to Lindsay. She can introduce herself to the board and.
So I'm Lindsay Polish. I serve as Assistant General Counsel at Case Task Force 1. For the library, my firm has represented the library for about a year now. Last summer we were hired. My firm is Law Municipal Law. We represent political subdivisions across the state. I think we have about nearly 100 clients these days. And myself and then Jeremy Cover also in my firm handle the library. So start, I don't know if we can get my presentation. We'll do just a sort of welcome general roles and responsibilities for the Board of Trustees, covering a little bit of just sort of basics of how the library functions, and then also the Sunshine Law and ethics.
Do you want to bring up that computer?
I work with Jill not infrequently come September, and she's very helpful if you have any questions. She's great.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, it's okay. So I'll just get started. Just general information about the library. The library is a political subdivision. I don't know how aware of you all are of the laws regarding the library, so I just wanted to start there, just in case you didn't know. And we call it a political subdivision because you have a tax, obviously, that allows you to raise funds for the library, and that is most of the reason why the library is regulated by statute, because the state wants to regulate those taxing jurisdictions. So it is governed by a board of trustees, you all, and then also the library has, of course, employees and staff and a librarian who serve the administrative functions of the library. The board of trustees should function more as the policymakers, and the roadmap up here is where the board of trustees is, and down here actually doing the administrative work day to day is the library administrative staff. The library is governed by Chapter 182, which is the statutes on the library. If you go on to the Revisor of Missouri statute, it has Chapter 182, but there are all sorts of different types of library districts in there. There's city library districts, county library districts, which you are a part of. So just to be aware, if you do go looking through these statutes, that some of them don't apply to you, even though it does say library. Just good things to be aware of. And then we can actually go to the next slide. So the reason I bring up Chapter 182 is because we would call that the enabling act for the statute. That is what gives the library powers to act. If you don't find that power in those statutes, you probably don't have it. Like the library is not allowed to have a sales tax because the General Assembly has decided that. It's just not in those statutes. It's not in the powers. What we call this concept is Dillon's rule. And Dillon's rule says that unless your power is expressed in specific words in the statute, is necessarily or fairly implied in the statute, or is essential to the declared terms of your powers, you don't have that power. If any courts are looking at, oh, should they have been able to do this or not? And if it's a reasonable doubt that you did not have that power, it's going to be resolved in the favor of not having that power, because we want to only follow what we are allowed to do in statute. And when I say necessarily or fairly implied in, that can mean a lot of things. For example, for a comparison for a city, cities are allowed to create streets and traffic codes and all of that kind of things. Those are explicit powers. You're allowed to regulate streets. But the statutes don't say, here's where you can put a stop sign and here's where you can put a stop sign and here's where your stoplight goes. Because those are fairly implied. When we create streets, we need to have traffic controls and things like that. So while you might think, oh, necessarily or fairly implied, that means a lot of things, maybe not so many things, but just good things to be aware of. And then we can go to the next slide. So for the role of the governing body, this is from the library's bylaws. And it specifies that the board has the making and the directing of policy responsibilities. It promotes the library interest, secures adequate funds, which is passing the property tax, and then also administrating the library funds and property, which would mean the board has to approve any property acquisition or selling. And then also, you have to prepare a budget and pass a budget every year to be able to complete library functions. It separates out the library director's responsibility, which is directly responsible for the employment of staff, and then also the operation of the library within that budget. You guys pass the budget, but then the library director is the one who's actually appropriating out and saying, this is where this is going, and we're gonna buy these books, and then also just the daily general operation of the library. And then we can go to the next slide. Yes. So just basic procedural rules for a meeting. One, we will get into this a little bit more in the next slide, but one, you have to have notice. This meeting was noticed up pursuant to the Sunshine Law that you all will meet and have a quorum. To also have a meeting, you do have to have a quorum. If 2 of you were here and 3 of you were gone, we would not be able to have a meeting. And you guys could talk while you wanted to, but it would not be a meeting of the board. You would not be able to vote or to take any actions on behalf of the board. You have to have a quorum, which is just a simple majority of your trustees. Then again, the presiding officer, the president of the board, controls the meeting. When your agenda is set, it is set and then approved by the board, like we did earlier, just approving the agenda for the evening. And then public comments are great to have, and it's not imperative. It is a good idea to have a time limit on them like you did, because this is, after all, a meeting of the Board of Trustees who are effectuating business of the board. We do have, it is a limited public forum, so we allow public comments, but there is still business that needs to get done for the board. And then finally, motions are brought forward and then discussed, possibly acted upon. That is how business actually gets done, by approval of a majority of the board members. And then we'll go into the sunshine. Any questions just about basic procedural things? So the sunshine law.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Lindsay, what's the best, does it matter? What is the best way to go about motions and different things and discussions on things that are going to, that need to take action? Is it better to have the motion and second and made to then have discussion? Or is it okay to have a discussion and then decide, okay, now we're gonna, does it matter?
It just really depends on what you want to do. Do you guys follow Robert's rules? Is that a set? So I would just follow, I don't know that they have any set parameters of what to do. You don't necessarily have to have a motion to discuss an item because it is on the agenda. So you could just get to the next item on the agenda and say, any discussion, or is there a motion? Somebody might have a motion to amend it or something else. So it really just depends on however you would like to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Robert's rules is great, but it was created for Parliament, which has quite a few more members than you guys. So sometimes it doesn't always function super well.
Yeah.
But it is good to maintain that order. Just when you can do that in the easy, smooth meetings, it makes it better for the difficult of meetings. So the Sunshine Law governs public records, public meetings, and public votes. So everything, all of that information, public records, public meetings, public business, those are all presumed to be open under the Sunshine Law. The Sunshine Law gives us the authority to close particular items, which we'll go into on the next slide. But that's just a good reminder. The intent of the Sunshine Law is for everything to be open and accessible to the public. Like I said, it does require a 24-hour notice for all meetings of the board, and that is meetings of the board that are full quorum meetings of the board. If you and a member run into each other at the grocery store and start chatting, that's not a meeting. There's no reason to scurry off and think that you messed up any rules or anything. But if you start talking and then somebody else comes along also, and then you start talking about the meeting next week, that's where we get into some issues. That if it's public business, public agenda items, that's not something that you can discuss without having that 24-hour notice.
How do we have to deliver notice?
It's usually posted at somewhere where the public can find it, posted online, just posted available for somebody to see it. You don't have to post it online, but everything is so online these days that I think it's just one of those accommodations that is a nice thing to be able to provide for people. And it is just the agenda. You don't have to post the whole meeting packet if you don't want. It is just the notice and the tentative agenda that needs to be posted in 24 hours in advance. And that's 24 day hours. So if your meeting's at 4:45 the previous day, but it does not include weekends or holidays when the library would be closed. Like I said, this does cover records also, so people can request public records. You do have to respond to that request within 3 business days, but that doesn't mean you have to comply with it. It might take a while to actually compile all those records. Some of them may be in a different location because they're old records from the 60s. Who knows? So it might take a while to actually be able to effectuate that response, but you do have to respond generally within 3 days. And that's something that the library administration should be handling, not necessarily you guys. Just so it's not like you have to worry about 3 days, just a note. And then we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So these are common reasons, not all of them, but common reasons for closing a meeting or a record. Legal actions, litigation, privileged communication with attorneys, those don't have to be open records, and and when I say they don't have to, like I said, the Sunshine Law defaults to open. It gives you reasons to close things. They don't have to be closed records. If somebody requests it and you're like, we don't care of this, you can still provide it for them. It does not mandate closure, but it gives you a reason to be able to close things. Real estate transactions is another one. And negotiated contracts, but only until they're finalized. When they're executed, then that would become public record. Hiring, firing, discipline, and promotion of employees are closed records. Employee and personnel issues get a little bit difficult sometimes because not the specific reason you want to talk about something may not be a reason for closing the record or the meeting. Sometimes we just say personnel is the reason for closing a record, but it's not quite that. It's hiring, firing, disciplining, and promotion. And then also individually identifiable personnel records. Those are all closed things. And then also sealed bids before they go out, because obviously we want to be able to protect what we are seeking from a request. So to be able to have a closed meeting, one, it has to be on the agenda, but also the specific reason for, because all of those listed items in the last slide, those all have numbers in the statute. So you have to include which number you are closing under so that we know you're not just going into closed session for whatever, you're going in for confidential communications with your attorney or something like that. You do have to have a motion to go into close. Typically, any type of motion you do can be a roll call, or I'm sorry, can be a voice vote, just yay or nay. But to go into closed session, it does have to be a voice vote, so everybody has to vote yes or no. And then it has to also be approved to go into closed session. You do have to stay on topic because, like I said, there's only a specific couple reasons to close the meeting, so we need to make sure we're on topic for those reasons. Anything else is defaulted to being an open meeting topic. Any votes that you take in closed session also need to be a roll call, which includes going out of closed session and then going back to the open meeting. How it'll work is that you're in an open meeting, the meeting's starting, and then it's time to go to the closed meeting. Somebody makes a motion, I motion to go into closed session for X reason. Everybody does their roll call vote, and then you go into closed session. Then it's a kind of a mini meeting inside of a meeting. So generally, your minutes will still be taken. Any votes will still be recorded in the minutes, the date and time, but attendance will still be in the minutes. And then when you're done, you'll vote to go out of closed session and go back into open session, and then you can adjourn your open session. It's one of those, it's like, man, really all these steps? Yeah, kind of, sorry.
When you adjourn the open session, does there have to be a vote or can it just be
Adjourning open session could just be generally people call for a voice vote is typically pretty standard.
Okay.
I don't think you have to motion to go into adjourn, but it is generally an accepted practice.
Gotcha.
And then just that last note is that there are some cases where, like, for example, there's some personnel requirements that if you do decide to fire somebody, that that information is open after 72 hours, but you are encouraged to give the employee notice first.
For that.
So those types of things. Sometimes there are steps you need to take after going into close. And I think I said this, but I just want to make sure to go into close, whoever's making the motion should also give the reason in the motion also, so that it's clear. The library is a little special in that there's also a statute about library records that allows library records to be closed. And actually, I said allows them to be closed. They are closed. So they are confidential records that people cannot request or receive. It would be any record that identifies a person as having requested, used, or borrowed library material, which is anything that they can borrow or use. And any records that identify the names of library users. Those are all closed records mandated by statute. And the reason is just that we shouldn't, or the General Assembly has decided that people shouldn't be able to request what people are reading. That should be able to be a private thing that is just for themselves. We would only provide those in response to a written request from the person whose records they are, or in response to a court order if it came to that. Now we go to ethics. I'll start by saying the ethics statutes are very fact intensive and depend a lot on, there's a couple different ones, and some of them only apply to elected officials, some only apply to elected or appointed officials and not employees. Some also apply to employees. So if there's ever a question of, I don't know about this, just ask, because it is complicated and fact intensive, and if you're confused, then we should be able to figure that out. So we'll start with a couple issues for appointed officials and employees. These are all prohibited acts, and if they're generally pay to play, quid pro quo kind of things that are in violation of state statute. So appointed officials and employees are prohibited from acting or refraining from acting because of an offer to pay, from using or disclosing confidential information that was obtained in office, or using your employment for financial gain, or information that was obtained in office or in employment for financial gain. Prohibited from favorably acting on a matter specifically designed to provide special monetary benefit to the person in question, their spouse, or their dependent children. And then also prohibited from using decision-making authority for financial gain and advocating for an appointment in exchange for value. Generally, all pay-to-play sort of quid pro quo things. I'll also say, on just a note on the confidential information one, that while this is a prohibition against using confidential information for financial gain, generally any confidential information should remain confidential too, especially if it's something that's talked about in closed session. Those items should stay for the board's information to themselves. There's reason that they were closed after all. And that is a good note, actually, that it was a decision of the board to close those items or have that closed meeting, and to take that confidential information out of that meeting then is in violation of that decision of the entire board. That can have some, I won't say that like the prosecuting attorney will come after you for that, but it does have some repercussions amongst the board. And the next slide we'll go to is also for appointed officials and then employees who are serving in an executive or administrative capacity. Of course, the General Assembly didn't define that term for us, but generally, library director, maybe the assistant library director, people who have, executive capacity, as you kind of understand that term generally. And these, you are prohibited from performing service for the library other than compensation from official duties. So getting paid to mow the grass outside, that's frowned upon, even though you might seem, oh, no big deal, that's no problem, we just need to get it done. that is in violation of the statute if it's for pay. You're also prohibited from engaging in a property transaction with the political subdivision, or I'm sorry, with the library, and attempting to influence the decision of the library that might result in the performance of service or property transaction. However, all of those three things can't be done for under $500 or for under $5,000 per year, and sometimes when it's competitively bid and then that official bid was the lowest received. Like this one in particular, like I said, is very fact intensive. So if something like this comes up, we can take a look at it. And then there are no exceptions to these last three, that elected officials and appointed officials and those executive positions are prohibited from, during the tenure of office, performing services for pay from another to influence the decision of the library. During 1 year after your office is terminated, still performing services for another or from another to influence the decision of the library. And then performing any service for any consideration from another at any point after termination in relation to a matter that the official was directly concerned or personally participated in. So this is another one that is very fact intensive, and if you feel like you personally participated in it, you probably did. Okay, then we'll go to the next one. This one concerns members of governing bodies, the Board of Trustees, and they are the same prohibitions, but they apply to individuals and then any businesses that you would have a more than 10% interest in. So if you own a business, they also apply to your business, not just you yourself. Prohibited from performing services for the political subdivision for pay other than those official duties, compensation. Prohibited from engaging in property transactions, and also prohibited from attempting to influence the decision of the library when the result might be the performance of service or property transactions. Now, those are also, they have that qualification of if it's under 500 or 5,000 per year, or if it's competitively bid, then it's okay. But again, all situations that can be fraught with issues, so if they come up, we can take a look at them and figure that one out. On the next slide here, our last ethics issue. Just a good one to be aware of, that nepotism is prohibited by the Missouri Constitution. That means that you cannot appoint or employ anybody in your fourth degree of consanguinity, which would be up to your great-greats. There's a little chart in there if that helps you. This is an automatic forfeiture of office issue. If it happens, there's no correcting it, you forfeit your office. There is a case where I think it was a police chief hired his brother or so, and then fired his brother after they found out it was an issue. But sorry, that doesn't do it. You're still out. Now you can fix it by not voting on the issue, just not participating in that vote or discussion, and that is common, especially in some smaller cities. Sometimes it's hard to avoid that fourth consanguinity line. And then on our last page, just some practical tips for effective staff board relations. Oh, sure.
Can I go back and throw this out there since it's already been mentioned? Because it doesn't really fall under nepotism, and it's certainly not a financial issue. But my mother sits on the board of the Cass County Historic Society, and as you know, these two parties are having some issues. Is that fair to say? And my mother and I certainly do not discuss it. I didn't really know my mother was on the board, actually, until recently. But so is there any issue with me participating in discussions among the board when we talk about this pending litigation? Should I recuse myself?
Sure. I don't think that there is a statute on point saying that is a misdemeanor or felony or anything there. So that's one. Two, that is more of a you decision if you feel that is appropriate to do.
It's more from the appearance of impropriety. What would look bad.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually, because it's not always just wasn't against the statute. It is the appearance of impropriety a lot. So it is always a good idea that if you feel that there is going to be an issue here or it might brought up, it is always a good idea to recuse or to step back and say, I'm not going to participate in this type of issue.
So, I didn't have any knowledge other than what the other board members have about the situation. In fact, I have less since I'm new. So I just want to make sure that everybody knew of that possible conflict in family relationship.
And it's always good to be upfront and bring them up before it's a problem. Yeah. So effective staff board relations, just a few things. One, to be prepared for meetings, and I should say these are for staff and board members, to be prepared for meetings, to know what's in the agenda packet and to know what's areas of concern, and if you have any questions. And then the second one would be to ask questions of staff before meetings. I mean, it happens to me, and that's why I put it in here that somebody asks you a question, and you're like, oh, I wish you would have asked me an hour ago, and I could have looked up some things and really got you that answer, but now it'll have to wait until after this meeting. So it's always a good idea that if you, and things come up, questions come up, and that's no big deal, but if it is possible to ask staff beforehand, if so that they can get some information or to follow up, that's always appreciative. And then also, to anticipate the questions and information that the board would need to act and to be prepared for those meetings and ready to have all that information available. A big one would be to don't criticize or ridicule in public, either each other or staff members or members of the public. It is a tough job sometimes to be up here, and it makes it easier if we can all get along and build trust together and not being fearful of whether it's good criticism or poor criticism, unjustified criticism. It's always good to be able to know that will happen in private between the two of you and not in public and on YouTube. They're there forever. And then, like I said, if it is a staff member issue, that really is the responsibility of the library director, not the board to take into its own hands, or a particular trustee to take into their own hands. So those are always things to just think about before we act real fast and accuse somebody of something or something like that. Another one is just to respond to communications in a timely and professional manner. Everybody there, it's a go, answer this email, answer this text world, and it's tough to keep up sometimes, but just being able to respond to emails and to engage in conversation when we need to be able to do that is always helpful. Again, acting in a fair and ethical and consistent manner also that helps build trust and make sure the board is working together. My last one got cut off there, but honestly, it's just to be kind, be nice to each other. We're all just trying to do our jobs. We're all here, serving for the library, and providing books and movies and resources for the public, and being nice to each other just makes it all a little bit easier, especially when things do get tough and things do get tough and tough conversations are had, but knowing that everybody is just nice and kind to each other helps a lot. So.
A couple of years ago, we had a sunshine request for that they wanted emails between the board. And at that time, we had a couple of board members that didn't want to use the library provided email. So I just want to stress, it's a lot easier if you are going to be talking with us to use the library email and not your personal email, because then when you get that sunshine request, they're getting into your personal email.
Yeah, that's a good note.
So try to.
Yeah. And also just be aware that even if you are on email and then there's a communication between a majority of the board members, that also could constitute a meeting. So really business shouldn't be conducted on email, converse. Yes, I will be there at that meeting.
Yes.
I got the agenda, thanks. But it can, just because you don't think it's a meeting doesn't quite mean meeting together in person and discussing it. It could be an email string too, and that's where people get tripped up sometimes. Yeah. Any questions? And I'm here all the time. Robin has my email, so if you've got any questions, anything comes up, just let us know.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Consent.
Yeah. Um, so if you want to look, I'm sure you already have looked, but the budget page that's in your packet every month, you can kind of refer to that, and I'll just kind of point out a few things. So I already kind of gave you a little bit of a little summary in your packet, just that overall, we're halfway through the year, and how much we've spent in the categories in general kind of matches where we're at in the year. And then some of the budget lines that we have not really spent, there's reasons regarding like as far as like purchasing a second kiosk. Like there were things that were planned when that budget was made that we've pivoted a little bit from or decided to delay for a bit. But overall, in the first half of the year, we've spent, as you can see, 38% of the budget. The personnel and the operations sections are the ones that are pretty much close to half spent. But you would kind of expect that because most of those are things that are anticipated costs that occur regularly throughout the year. Um, Within those categories, building maintenance, you'll notice it's a little bit higher. If you remember, we had to replace an HVAC unit at NRC this year, which is very, very expensive. We also dealt with sewer pipe issues at Pleasant Hill earlier in the year that was unanticipated. We've cleaned all the branch carpets already this year, and we've had a few extra cleanings and pest treatments at the NRC. So all those things have kind of added up to push more than halfway.
Was there any
Activity,
anticipation that we may need to address that?
not yet,
Okay.
no. Because the worst is behind us, right?
Yeah.
They're gonna sail into the rest of the year, no problems. On the activities, right now, a lot of things, and you saw a lot of the payables. We're still paying performers, so a lot of things for summer library program are still rolling in. That's usually the bulk of what we're spending on activities expenditures, but also we are holding back things because winter reading challenge, we haven't gotten to the summer yet, so we haven't focused on winter um, programming just yet. On travel and dues and professional development in those areas. Our biggest thing is going to be the upcoming Missouri Library Association conference because that is here in Kansas City this fall. And two of our staff members are actually on the planning committee for that. And because it is in town, we have the means to be able to send a lot of our staff. So we have many branch managers, administration, a few of the like youth specialists will be attending. So those things will be coming in as we register. In marketing and promotion, it's a little bit higher. We budgeted for one of those postcard mailing campaigns this year, which we've done. And so and we also made a big purchase earlier in the year of branded items like that we hand out when we do outreach events. Then there will probably be a smaller restocking purchase later in this year. But and then professional services that's includes legal and consulting. And so we're making. I think it may have ended up on your amended payables, but we're making half the consultant's fee for the capital improvement plan now, and then the other half once it's complete. So that'll be posting up on there. In the materials section, that's only at 39%. And a lot of those expenditures will happen here in the second half of the year. So our periodical subscription just renewed, so that'll be coming up probably in next month's payables. You'll see that. Our online resources, some of them have fall renewal dates, so those haven't come across our desk yet. And purchases of youth media, they're only really made a few times a year, so. And then, and like I mentioned before, there hasn't been much spending in the capital services category this year. We kind of held back on some of the branch budget requests, partly because it was good to get Lee on board so he kind of worked with the managers to manage those things. So we're starting to focus on getting through those. The plans for Drexel we're just kind of putting those on hold right now. And as we were working to secure that property on Royal Street, we knew there's going to be associated expenses. And we just wanted to hold on so that we would have the means to take care of things we wanted to over there. And then genealogy is still in the process of selecting, kind of planning the furniture updates and things that they're going to do in there. So those are coming down the pike, but you don't see them yet.
Yep.
So, did anyone have any specific questions?
Street parking, but how is that going now that it's a thing?
I'm glad that was going to be in my, so I
Oh,
wrote something up.
me.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah, we can.
I'll touch on that.
Okay, now we'll move into action items. First item up is the election of board officers. The board of trustees needs a president, a vice president, and a treasurer. Those are the offices that are necessary. I don't know if they're statutorily required. I think they're just in the bylaws. I think they're just in the bylaws. So if anyone wants to.
I'm next time along for president.
Discussion. You'll to vote for the president, Tanya Long, we'll do a roll call. Dennis.
Aye.
Sheriff. Becky.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you. Vice President. Well, I talked to Jerry, so I asked her about that. I will move that, we elect Sherry Peters for Vice President of the board. Any discussion? We'll take a roll call for Sherry Peters, Vice President. Dennis. Sherry. Becky.
Aye.
Diana.
Aye.
Tanya, yes. And then treasurer. I will move that we nominate Becky for the treasurer.
And I'll second that.
Discussion? Just so easy. We'll take a roll call for Becky, treasurer. Dennis. Sherry.
Aye.
Becky.
Abstain.
Diana.
Aye.
Tanya, yes. Easy peasy. All right, thank you.
Thank you, ladies.
Okay, so now we move on to the code of ethics review. Was there, and so in the packet, there was the current code of ethics. We received this evening the redlined one, not that it's not completely necessary. The one that we're looking to approve is the one that's dated 2024, which was in our packet. Any questions, comments, concerns, or anyone ready to make a motion to approve this code of ethics? Basically, I'll let everybody know, I mean, Lindsay, you reviewed it, and that the red lines are all the things that you suggested that be either changed or
No
added.
major changes, just a few clarification things that made it more applicable to the library than
Yeah, so that is
general code.
that's much better. Is there any discussion or questions, or somebody, I would entertain a motion to approve the presented 2024 Code of Ethics for the Cass County Public Library.
I make a motion to approve the 2024 Code of Ethics for the Cass County Public Library.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion and a second to approve the 2024 Code of Ethics for the library. We'll take a roll call. Dennis.
Aye.
Sherry.
Aye.
Becky.
Aye.
Diana.
Aye.
Tanya, yes.
We're just moving on.
All right, now we're to the director's reports. We'll hear from you firstly.
Yeah, I think
You're
so.
you're the
I'll
man.
do the changes in staff positions. We had some internal movements, almost all of them at NRC.
Yep.
Israel Gully moved into a 30-hour position. Michaela Collins, whose name I butchered the spelling of in this document, so public apologies to her, moved into his 20-hour position. And then today we filled an additional 30-hour position at NRC that we'll put on here next month. That'll give us some crossover time to cross train with the current person that has not left us yet. And we have a 12-hour position now filled due to Michaela's advancement at NRC as well. And we'll have other openings next month too. But that's all right.
Grants activity reports. That okay, cool. Well, let me just, Lee, how are you doing? You getting in the groove? You
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we've done, 4 or 5 hirings now over the last 3 months. I don't know that pace will change over the next few months, but that's sort of the nature of things.
yeah.
I've met with all of the branch managers, except for 2 twice now, in the middle of sort of July meeting with everyone. Like Robin said, we know that we have a budget that was approved for certain things for certain branches, and there's just kind of not been anyone there to talk through that with them and approve those things. So we are looking at a lot of furniture
Yeah.
and buying vacuums for Drexel and
Drexel.
well, lots of different things that
Yeah.
they'd kind of had been on hold
Yeah.
until they had someone to give them a thumbs up on things. So
Yeah, glad you're here so you can help us kind of.
so far so good. I'm
Good.
having a good time. So
Okay,
thank
good.
you for your help.
Okay. Well, speaking of Drexel, what instigated the purchase of the vacuum now, actually? This past Sunday, a rock flew up from the lawnmower and it shattered the door glass. And it went everywhere. And so it got boarded up that day, but the glass didn't get replaced just until this morning. And so, yeah, and so Lee went out there and bought the vacuum cleaner and did some rug cleaning to make sure there were no little shards in the interior carpeted area. And
Story time went off without a hitch this morning.
yes, yes. And they stayed open. We just had people go around the back because they have that back door there. So, but yeah, it's a nice little segue into some of the updates here. And NRC, the water leakage is not finished yet, and part of it, like over the large front area, that part, I mean, it's diminished, and it continues to diminish, but it's just not completely resolved. And apparently, if you see it from the outside, there's that tower part, and that's where they need to get access into to get this part repaired. That should stop this condition or additional leakage. And so they basically had to order an access door so that they can install that and then go in there. Yeah. So couple of weeks, they say.
Rod did actually, the new property manager met with Rod, the manager of NRC, this morning and did a walkthrough to look at those things for the first time in a while. So
Good.
I've not heard how that went, but it happened, and that's good.
I believe she's going to take their conversation and what she observed back to John Evans, the property owner. And because there was discussion too over the moisture that's coming in that east wall in the children's area, and it's pretty much wrecked the paint job over there. And so, discussion about, getting that, well, first the moisture to stop and then getting that repainted properly. So, that's just the update on there. And the bookmobile, on Thursday, June 27th, they were out of stock. They had the awning extended out. And I don't know what happened, but I got this text picture at like 7 o'clock at night from Amy of the awning like disconnected from the motor that makes it go up and down. And so I texted back, "What am I looking at?" Because I didn't really know what it was, but I knew it was a problem with the bookmobile.
Yeah.
And so they basically got it secured back up. They will not reopen it until it's actually repaired. But we're thinking maybe next year because it has been, with all the repairs and maintenance throughout this entire year, it has been off the road so much. It has interfered with the scheduling. And so I think they like to try to, because this is not imperative
Yeah,
to
it's
get
not a
fixed.
requirement to
Right.
have.
So that's kind of what we're looking at there. And tomorrow, with regards to capital improvement plan, tomorrow is the facility tour that Lee and Zach and I will go on with Steve Potter and Brad McKenzie, who is an architect colleague, acquaintance that he has. And we will tour all of the physical locations in one day. So a very tight schedule of trying to hit everywhere and spend adequate time there
Yeah.
to see what we need to see. So. Um, our summer library program, it's closing in with just a couple weeks left. July 31st is when it ends. And just general to date, we've had 2,100 registrations overall. 698 completions have been recorded. And 840 activities have been completed. And so this year we did it where you could go in and you can earn badges in Bean Staff where you track your progress for doing different things, like visiting a branch that's not your normal branch and things like that. And people self-report like they do for their reading on there. So we've got the measure. We usually see the completions right there towards the end. So probably more people have finished. They just haven't logged their things quite yet because it's not the end. So, okay. And so Royal Street. So now that we have taken possession of that property on Royal Street, we've begun planning the updates and the modifications. We had discussed that when we were considering acquiring the property, the things we were going to do on that. So just to refresh you and to bring the new folks up to date. The biggest thing is outfitting that smaller garage on the one side that has the two doors with one large door. And that garage would be where the bookmobile is stored. The access on that side, especially from the street, is much better for the bookmobile to lower the chance of any scraping accidents or anything like that. And so that we've been able to get one estimate for that work, and it's about 31,000 for that. And we're working on getting some additional ones. The thing that Zach's run into, he's reached out to a lot of places, but either he's not getting responses, maybe because they're already booked up, or they just don't do the scope of that kind of work. I mean, that is a special garage door that'll have to be ordered and whatnot. Yeah.
And the concrete work behind it.
But it seems like even when we were contemplating the property itself, that's around kind of just what you had sort of found in your research to kind of help us know, hey, what are we kind of just the idea of what we were looking at.
And to be honest, anything that was maybe accidentally missed originally with that calculation, it was completely something I didn't realize that maybe had to be changed, like the concrete edge there in order to make that slope correct, or also make it not a hard line, so that way you literally have to jump 3 or 4 inches every time.
Yeah.
Some stuff like that I did not quite get in that original picture of it, due to the nature of, just not being able to get a full scope of it.
Yeah.
But it is pretty close.
Yeah. I was in the ballpark, so.
It's in the ballpark.
Yeah. And electrical updates, we need to add a plug for the bookmobile and adjust the voltage on the electrical box to accommodate that amperage, and update some of the electric on the upstairs and replace some lighting, so that kind of thing. And then update the flooring, the paint, and replace the cabinets upstairs. The downstairs is pretty nice. We will.
Upstairs is where you guys will be?
Yes.
That's the plan, and their break room area, and then
For everybody?
yes, for everyone, and then maybe like a meeting conference type area there. And of course, furnishing these spaces. We'll be able to repurpose a lot of things since it's not open for public services. We have a lot more leeway. Like, we want quality things, but it doesn't have to be the kind of things that we would be ordering for like a branch setting. So those are the things that we're focusing on and trying to plan right now, with the goal of the priority being getting the bookmobile and the bookmobile staff moved in and operating out of there first, if we have to prioritize, and then we can maybe do more on the upstairs.
Well, I know that'll help bookmobile staff from what they are currently doing, where they're currently working from the whole situation, having everything in one place is going to be still beneficial and helpful for them.
Yeah.
So I'm cool with that.
Yeah, it's gonna be good. So we're kind of thinking right now, a total expense of that scope of things. Maybe we're gonna do 40 to 45,000, which we have that we can pull then from those capital budget lines that you're seeing there. So, but yeah, we're very excited. Amy and Zach are super duper excited. Amy's already pretty much packed. She's like, just say the word, and we can get moved over there. So, but yeah.
Anything else there? We're good. Trustee reports. Becky, I know the foundation met on the 8th, right?
Foundation met, not a whole lot of new. We just did some planning. We've made most of our donations to the end so they can start doing some things that you guys requested. And looking at making a permanent story walk at Pleasant Hill, but that's still in the planning stages. We got to meet some ADA requirements. You just can't have a downward sloping sidewalk. It'd be too much of a slope for a wheelchair or a walker or something like that. So that's being, it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
And our next meeting is in October. I hate to say it, but we already started planning the Christmas tree display at Raymore City Park for December, but we have to start it now.
Yeah.
So we have a plan in October. So that's pretty much it. There will not be a used book sale this fall. We're going to do it like every 2 years. And just not going to do it again right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other trustees have any comments they want to make? Well, then I would entertain a motion to recess to executive as per the agenda.
Make a motion that we recess to executive session for legal Missouri Revised Statute 610.021.1 and personnel Missouri Revised Statute 610.021.13.
I'll second it. I will not repeat all those things, but it is the movement is to recess to executive session for legal and personnel defense. Sure. Becky, aye. Thank you. Aye. Tanya, yes. Thank you all for